Tonight, the FBI concludes its investigation at the Rainbow Bridge border crossing, finding no explosives at the deadly scene.
It's a vehicle and it's flying through the air.
Huge fire and smoke, billowing smoke.
Downgraded from initial terrorism concerns, why the FBI says the explosion at the border that killed 2 people is now considered a traffic investigation.
We have not heard from Romy or seen from Romy in 47 days.
Literally the equivalent of taking a lunch break for a genocide.
Plus, doubting the deal between Israel and Hamas, why Torontonians from different walks of life are sharing similar anxieties around a pause in fighting.
That's ridiculous and punitive.
And brewing anger with Ontario's beer and wine sector, why insiders say they're optimistic retail restrictions could be on the Ford government's chopping block. I'm Chris Glover, live in the CBC Toronto newsroom. Thanks for joining us on a very busy Wednesday evening. And we begin tonight in Niagara Falls, where 2 people are dead after a car exploded at the Rainbow Bridge border crossing. It had officials on both sides of the border on high alert through the afternoon. Then this evening, initial fears of a terrorist attack were dismissed by New York's governor. And late tonight, the FBI said it concluded its investigation, finding no explosives. Lorenda Redekop has been on the story all afternoon and joins us now live from the scene. Lorenda, so much has changed over just a few hours here. What are you seeing now?
That's right, Chris. Well, the Rainbow Bridge remains closed tonight. And if you take a look just across where you see all those lights, that's the U.S. side where all of this happened. And it was also 3 other border crossings in this area. They were closed as well for much of the afternoon as authorities tried to figure out what had happened. Now, this is a busy area. Lots of tourists. You can see there's Niagara Falls right there. But earlier today, for many people in both the U.S. and in Canada, there was panic and worry as everyone tried to figure out what had happened. And now we're beginning to learn more.
On the U.S. side of the Rainbow Bridge border crossing, suddenly a speeding vehicle goes airborne, flying out of control. Then it hits something and explodes into flames. Both people inside the vehicle died. A U.S. border worker suffered minor injuries.
I seen something airborne. I first thought it was an airplane. It looked like slow motion. And I said, my God, it's a car. And it's a vehicle and it's flying through the air. He hit the concrete barrier.
Some people were in the midst of crossing the border at the time.
We all ran to the window to see, and right down below us was this huge fire and smoke, billowing smoke, black, huge smoke coming up, and we could see all the debris and a cushion on one side. The trunk was spewed open. It was terrible.
For hours, there were questions and worries this could be part of something larger. 3 other crossings in the area were closed as a precaution. The Prime Minister talked about the incident during question period.
We are taking this extraordinarily seriously.
Then he left to be briefed. The FBI led the investigation, including its terrorism task force.
When an explosion happens at an international border crossing, Thanksgiving weekend in the United States is coming up. These are obviously worrisome and serious incidents.
But then, more than 5 hours after the explosion, the 3 other borders were reopened. And this from New York's governor.
I want to be very, very clear to Americans and New Yorkers. At this time, there is no indication of a terrorist attack.
She says the car was destroyed, shattered into pieces, its license plate illegible.
This investigation will go on for a number of days, and that's why we will not have any further answers at this time as to the individuals involved, the deceased, any motivation, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. But at this time, we just need to dial down the temperature right now.
Now, the governor says that the driver was from Western New York, and this border crossing, it is expected to remain closed for a while yet. And as for those drivers who were crossing at the time, their cars are still there, trapped on the U.S. side, and it's unclear how long it'll be before they can get their vehicles back. Chris?
Thank you, Lorenda. Lorenda Redekop reporting live for us tonight in Niagara Falls. Next to Anam Khan, live at Pearson Airport. And this explosion in Buffalo happening right in the middle of one of the state's busiest travel periods, with American Thanksgiving tomorrow. And Anam, we know that the explosion at the land border upended some travel plans. It also led to a rapid police mobilization across the region. What have you learned about where all that stands tonight?
Both Toronto and Peel Police have increased their patrol tonight. And officials at Pearson here say flights have not been impacted. If anything, airlines here have increased their business because people left snarly land crossings to come here. Ontario's Murtaza Sadat hit the road to New Jersey with his family this morning, but turned back to Pearson to try to fly south after getting blocked at multiple border crossings.
The first border was closed and we didn't know what was going on, so he got rerouted to the next one. And we saw the border was closed again.
At a time this afternoon, the security incident at the Rainbow Bridge to Buffalo had shut down the 4 crossings in the area. Sadat was forced to spend thousands of dollars on last-minute flights.
Right now we're just trying to get to our destination, so haven't really processed everything.
After hearing about the explosion, some say it added to their traveling anxiety.
Yeah, they can shut down, right? Like, we never know what they can do.
It's a little concerning. Maybe a little bit more if it was at an airport.
Peel Police concerned too, sending extra officers to patrol at the airport. Toronto Police also saying out of an abundance of caution, expect more officers across the city. Local security concerns remained in place even after New York's governor said there's no indication of any terrorist activity, and they will continue to do so, says this expert.
Obviously, the initial concern on both sides was terrorism, and rightly so. That is now a standing protocol at border crossings, land and airport, because of things like 9/11, obviously. That changed the game. And so it is an automatic response.
He says the rapid police response would have included physical searches for things like bombs and online searches, including scanning social media.
So in a very short period of time, investigators were able to come to a conclusion that none of those ring the proverbial bell, meaning that there's no strong indicator that it's a terrorist act.
He also said the stepped-up security presence will likely continue in the upcoming days, given the explosion and how busy it is during this time of the year and Thanksgiving, and also because of security concerns in the Middle East. And now, the Toronto Police, I reached out to them after New York's governor said there is no indication of any terrorist activity, and they said they're going to continue their increased police presence for the time being.
Okay, thank you, Anam. Anam Khan reporting live for us tonight at Pearson International. Now to the other major story making headlines around the world today, the deal between Israel and Hamas to release some hostages and pause fighting. Despite that deal, calls continue for all hostages to be freed and for a permanent ceasefire. Dale Manukduk walks us through how people here in our region are reacting tonight.
This is audio of a phone call 23-year-old Romy Gonan made to her mom on October 7th. That was the last her family heard from her. This is video of Gonan from a different night, but she was at the music festival where hundreds were killed and people taken hostage by Hamas.
We know that Romy was shot at least once. We have not heard from Romy or seen from Romy in 47 days. We do not know if she's alive or if she's dead. We do not know if she's received medical aid, and we want her home.
Today, an installation was set up calling for the release of all hostages. While some were grateful for the deal to release 50 women and children, they say it falls short.
There's close to 240, so it's a start, but let me remind you that we're 6.5 weeks in. Everyone should have been released.
Also not enough, the release of 150 Palestinian women and children imprisoned by Israel.
Personally, I'll be happy when the 2.3 million hostages that have been kept kept in the open-air prison that is Gaza are released from Israel's shackles.
It points to a double standard in terms of value of life. We've also seen more than 14,000 Palestinians being murdered at the hands of Israel. There's also a question about the remaining more than 11,000 Palestinian prisoners who are being held by Israel.
Meanwhile, the other key point of the deal doesn't meet the bar for people who have been demanding a full ceasefire.
A humanitarian pause. That is literally the equivalent of taking a lunch break for a genocide. We're literally telling people on the ground, we're going to stop bombing you and murdering you and killing you for 4 days, and then we're going to go right back at it again.
People who want all of the hostages released and those calling for a ceasefire want the Canadian government to do more. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, a group demonstrated outside a downtown Toronto police division today, demanding the release of people arrested in connection with alleged vandalism at an Indigo bookstore at Bay and Bloor earlier this month. Toronto Police's hate crimes unit investigated after red paint was splashed on the store and posters accused Indigo's CEO of funding genocide. Police say they will release more information tomorrow about the arrests and any possible charges. Looking live at the city's downtown, 2 degrees and still cloudy tonight. Colette Kennedy joining us now with a first look at the forecast. Certainly not as bad as it could be for this late into November, but not great weather either. Hey, Colette?
Yeah, Chris, we may not have had as much wet weather as from yesterday, but still the gray skies making it a little gloomy, plus the west-northwesterly breeze. But even with that, temperatures seasonal are actually above when we look across southern Ontario. Toronto, okay, maybe it didn't feel like 7 because of the breeze, and it only lasted, it was right around 11 a.m. that we hit that, but it was there. St. Catharines at 9 kind of taking the cake there as well with that daytime high. So nice to see some good temperatures here. We just have a few days of that before things are going to be really cooling down. So as we look ahead, still quite a bit of cloud cover, and because of that breeze, a bit of lake effect, either some light showers or drizzle or even a few wet flurries coming off of Georgian Bay into Thursday. We should get some sunny breaks in the GTA, but a little harder to come by. However, you'll do better into southwestern Ontario with more sunshine there back towards the Windsor area. Overnight tonight, -1, feeling like -5, but tomorrow a seasonal high of 6, Chris. It's after that that the cooler air is going to move in. I will share those details when I come back.
All right, can't wait. Okay, thank you, Colette. We've learned new details tonight about a potential shakeup for Ontario's alcohol retailers. Industry sources tell CBC Toronto the Ford government is considering changes that go well beyond allowing corner stores to sell beer and wine. Working his sources to bring us this story, here's our senior reporter at Queen's Park, Mike Crowley.
Great Lakes Brewery has been making craft beer for more than 30 years. To be allowed to sell their products from this new retail outlet near Toronto's waterfront, their company had to invest $200,000 in brewing equipment. That's because Ontario only lets craft brewers put a retail shop where they make beer.
We think that's ridiculous and punitive, and if I want to open up, another store or 2 or 10, the market should be open for me to do that.
The limits on small wineries are even stricter. Just one retail outlet that must be located at the vineyard.
There is not a space that is as behind the times as what it is in Ontario.
The Ford government has been consulting with key players in the industry. Multiple sources from across the industry say those retail restrictions on craft brewers and small wineries are on the table, along with how much the LCBO earns from sales. Take a bottle of Ontario wine that costs you around $22. Once taxes and other fees come out, along with the LCBO's hefty retail markup, it leaves little more than $8 for the winery.
Let's make sure we can carve out a spot just for small wineries and give us an advantage.
In the beer sector, sources say the changes will bring an end to the beer store's monopoly on cases and 2-4s and allow convenience stores to sell beer and wine.
Well, I hope it's a huge shakeup.
Dave Bryans leads the Ontario Convenience Store Association.
Here's the opportunity for the government to really look at how do we open the market for consumers, not for big business.
A spokesperson says the government supports meaningful change to alcohol sales and looks forward to delivering choice to Ontarians and new opportunities for businesses. It could be another 2 years before changes actually kick in. That's because a contract between the province and the beer store limiting retail competition remains in effect until the end of 2025. Mike Crawley.
Returning now with day 3 of a high-profile inquest into a death at an Ontario correctional facility. Today, a video was shown of the man in serious distress just days before he died back in 2016. Tyler Cheese is covering the inquest for us. And a warning, the video Tyler's about to walk us through is disturbing.
Solomon, come here and speak to me, please. Who is it you don't trust, lad?
Video played at the coroner's inquest today shows Soliman Fakiri in his cell. Corrections officers broke protocol by recording the video in order to illustrate the man's mental health to decision makers at the facility. The footage shows the officers attempting to coax Fakiri out of his cell for a shower. The man is naked and mostly unresponsive, pacing in the cell and then laying face down on the floor. The video also shows the interior of the cell in disarray, covered in what appears to be soiled towels and toilet paper.
The stench of feces, urine, and vomit by the appearance of it. Acting irrationally. He's not responding. Going to try to get him out and get him cleaned up.
The officers are eventually able to handcuff Fakiri and move him to a shower stall. On December 15, 2016, Fakiri was pronounced dead after an altercation with guards. The man had previously been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. On Monday, Inquest Counsel said Fakiri should never have been sent to the facility, arguing that he should have been taken to a hospital instead. At the time of his death, he was awaiting a transfer to a medical facility. Now, I have spoken with family members today, and they say this week has been extremely painful, but they're hopeful this inquest will lead to changes in the correctional system. And of course, we'll continue to bring you updates as the inquest moves forward over the coming days. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to a CBC exclusive. A Toronto man was found liable of a $600,000 scam in civil court, but the criminal charges against him were tossed. As Angelina King reports, the reason is not sitting well with at least one fraud expert.
First, you might be wondering why the baby eels. They're actually the most expensive fish species per weight in Canada. They're also known as glass eels, and they're often flown to Asia where they're raised to adulthood for food. Now, I want to explain how this fraud all went down. Now, this is according to court records. For years, Sunshine Aquatic Products in Hong Kong has been buying glass eels from a company in Nova Scotia. Toronto resident Andre Dixon hacked that company's email account and set up a sale with Sunshine Aquatic for more than $600,000 worth of these eels. Now, Dixon, pretending to be the company, told Sunshine Aquatic that they got a new bank account, and he told them to transfer the money there. But it was actually an account that belonged to Dixon. Norman Groot is a civil fraud recovery lawyer who was hired by Sunshine Aquatic to try and get their money back.
And we brought one of these asset freezing motions, had the bank account frozen. There was about $150,000 left in the account. And we got a court order to have that paid out to the victim.
But Dixon still owes them the rest. He was found liable of fraud in civil court. He was also charged criminally, but those charges were withdrawn. An email between a Toronto police officer to Norman Groot explains the reason why. The Crown's office didn't believe it was in the public's interest to proceed with a trial, given there was already civil judgment against the accused, the officer wrote. A black eye on Ontario's justice system, according to this fraud expert.
This is absurd. Basically, what they're doing is they're saying, hey, we're just not going to do anything about this. Doesn't matter how serious this is. You've got carte blanche fraudsters, so, Canadians, best of luck.
We asked Ontario's Ministry of the Attorney General why this case isn't considered in the public's interest. A spokesperson didn't really say why. They did tell us that prosecutors consider a lot of different factors when deciding whether a case moves forward, including things like legal principles, evidence, and the likelihood of a conviction. In a statement saying, if the Crown determines that the charge does not meet this standard, the Crown is duty-bound to withdraw the charge. We also reached out to Dixon for comment multiple times, but he didn't respond.
All right, Colette, seasonal temps tomorrow, and then, as you were hinting earlier, things take a bit of a tumble from there, right?
Yes, I guess I did say that I would share those details on some of the cooler air coming, Chris. I know maybe not everyone wants to hear it, so let me just show you what's going on with our upper air pattern. Really the core of colder air that's well to the north would be nice if it would stay there, but that's not the case, kind of spreading out as we go through Thursday across the prairies, pushing into northern Ontario. And we still have a day tomorrow where temperatures are seasonal, but in southern Ontario, as we start moving into Friday, in fact, even Thursday night, this starts to encroach on our temperatures, that colder air diving in. And even as it seems to recede, it really doesn't change the impact that it has on us through the weekend with temperatures running on the cooler side. We'll illustrate that in the 5-day forecast here in just a moment. But just taking a look at some of the sky conditions in terms of the imagery, the satellite imagery with the cloud cover that'll be coming in. This model showing still quite a bit of cloud, the cloud deck that we'll have around the Golden Horseshoe. More sun, more sunny breaks into southwestern Ontario. I would expect we'll have at least some in the GTA, but into that later afternoon, the timing gets tricky because of the sun setting at just about 4:45. Also a little bit of light lake effect coming off of Georgian Bay. And then into Friday, that's enhanced a bit with a stronger northwesterly flow. So some wet flurries, a few of those could make their way down into the GTA on Friday. Temperatures overnight tonight then, this is what the thermometers will say, but we do have to factor in the winds, and so that wind chill value -4 to -7, a little bit cool there into Sarnia. And looking at St. Catharines after 9 today, overnight tonight, falling down to 0 to 1 degree towards Hamilton and that region. And then we get into some of those cooler readings that will be below freezing through the rest of the GTA. Oshawa at -2, and the wind chill to factor in there as well. So 6 tomorrow, but then there it is, a cooler Thursday night. Friday, a struggle to even get up to the freezing mark for that daytime high, and a very chilly night, Chris, Friday night into Saturday morning.
All right, we'll be ready. Thank you, Colette. Finally tonight, from 150 grams at birth to about 90 kilos now on her third birthday, this giant panda has grown into a real tourist attraction in Japan, and the zoo gifting her with some ice-shaped maple leaves. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching.